And welcome to another practice session. We've been working on separating the weight, and that being one of the fundamental aspects of this practice. And I want to start with the first third and get yourself really paying attention to stepping with an empty foot and being able to separate as you move through the form. And begin. So when we talk about separating the weight, one of the things that will help you with your separation is the cross-balance arm. So I want you to do this with me. Let's just take it from ward off left. We're going to go from ward off left to ward off right. And I'm going to face this way so that when I come into ward off right, I'm facing the camera. You've got Lee facing the canonical direction. So from ward off left, As you shift the weight into your left leg, the right hand cross balances it. And as you take this step forward off right, feel that there's a relationship between the weight in your left leg and the palm of your right hand as you take the step and complete the move. Rest your legs a moment. So we've been talking about the quality of dropping the sit bone, letting the knee become buoyant, and the hip joint folding, bending inward toward your center to facilitate the rebalancing of your leg to step with an empty foot. So let's do this again, and I want you to pay attention to those qualities as you feel the relationship to your cross-balance hand. So, word off left, and shift. Now the weight's in the left, it's balanced by your right hand. Drop the sit bone, float your knee, and take a step. Weight, no weight, and feel the relationship that the right hand gives you as you take that step and then complete the move. And rest your legs. So there's a way in which having cross balance makes it much easier to pay attention to what you're doing with your empty leg. We're going to do this a few more times, and I'm going to change which hand you're using so that we just have one hand out, and that will help you see how this cross balance really facilitates releasing the empty leg and being able to rebalance it so that you can take a weightless step. So let's do it again. And this time we'll still use both hands, then we'll switch. Okay, and go. So, weights in the left leg, balanced by the right hand. Get the rebalancing of your right leg so that you can step and complete the move. Next, let's do it where you only use your right hand. We'll do right hand, then we'll get rid of the right hand and only have the left hand out, and then we'll come back to it. So, word off left, and shift, and now just let your left hand go down by your side, and do the move just with your right hand. So now your right hand is palm up, and you're going to take a step, rebalance your empty leg, and step. See that you can actually keep your balance as you place the foot and complete the move. Now we're going to drop the right hand and only do it with the left. So, word off left. Let your right hand go down. Shift into your left leg. Your left hand is palm down. And just keep your right hand hanging and go ahead and rebalance your empty right leg and take a step. No weight. See what it takes. Go ahead and complete the move. Those two should feel really different. You should feel that the cross balance of your right hand is providing a sort of stability that enables you to free the right leg, get that rebalancing quality, and take the step without having to commit the weight or committing less if this is not entirely under your control to step completely weightless. If you can even step less weight, that's the start. So notice that no matter what you do with that right foot, using your right hand as a cross balance to the weight on the left leg is going to help you make that step. So let's do it again, just with the right hand, so that you get that sense. And into the right leg, left leg, right hand, let your left hand down. Right hand is palm up. Release your empty leg, rebalance it. The sit bone drops, the knee buoys, the hip joint comes in, and you have a good basis to take the step from. Complete the move. So we'll do it one more time with both hands, just so we can finish that off. And then I want to do it in an even more challenging step, going into flying diagonal. So let's do this one more time. Bring both hands into play and notice how this works. Shift. You've got that ball of air. That ball of air is there for a reason. It's your helper as you take the step and shift. So if that's not jumping out at you, as I'm a lot more balanced when I cross balance the hand, spend more time with it. Just take a look at it, give yourself time to really experience it, and I'm pretty sure you will find that cross balance greatly enhances the ability to step with a weightless leg. So now let's take a look at it in going from the last repulsed monkey to flying diagonal. So if I go this way, I won't be seen, so I guess I should stand this way so that I'll do flying diagonal toward the camera and Lee can do it the other way. So you're on your left leg. I guess we're doing it all with the right leg this time. But left leg, last of the repulsed monkeys, and go, turn back to the corner. Now feel the connection from the palm of your right hand to the bottom of your left foot. And as you step for this big step, you know what to do. Drop the sit bone, let the knee buoy, let the hip joint come in, and keep that feeling in the cross balance hand to help you take the step and complete the move. Let's just do that again. Begin. Connect up. Palm of your right hand, bottom of your left foot. Go ahead and free that right leg. Open and step. And complete the move. Rest your legs. We'll do it one more time. These difficult steps are greatly facilitated by getting the rebalancing quality on the leg that you're freeing and letting the cross balance help you take that step. If you can't step weightless, that's okay. Just do your best and try to notice how the requirements for balance are what will move you in the right direction. So, one more time. And go. Cross balance helps you open and step. Complete the move. Just for fun, let's try doing it without the cross balance hand. So turn back to the corner. And now just drop your right hand and go ahead and free and rebalance the right leg. Open, step. Notice how much more wobbly you are trying to take that step without having a cross-balance hand. That's what I want you to notice. If the only thing you notice is that the bottom of your foot is having a lot more trouble staying still, that's also a good thing to become aware of. That stability that the cross-balance gives you can play out in a number of ways. So just look for what it does for your ability to really make that step happen. And I just want to say something about, especially these hard moves. You may not be able to do them 100% perfect separation. Just work toward it. In your mind, you need to know that you're trying to separate. I had an experience where I had to do some rehab for several months, and it was physically impossible for me to stand on one leg. And I had to figure out how to separate, even though I couldn't separate. And so when I tell you, use all of your abilities, your mental as well as your physical, I'm speaking, I mean it. It really will help. It really will change it. So don't be discouraged if your ability to take one of these giant steps and be able to place the foot, no weight, all that stuff, if that's not available to you, don't just give up and say, well, I just can't do it. Keep working on it and let your awareness and your mind be an important part of how you do this. And giving yourself the opportunity to use cross-balance will help you also discover what it means to step empty and separate the weight. So let's actually do the separates, because there's no more separated move than a move called separate right and separate left. Now, we've done this with you before. This is a little Maggie hand motion that I think really describes what you want to have happen in the emptying leg. So it's quality like this. The elbow is coming in toward your hip joint, and that stands for the hip joint itself rotating and bending inward toward your center. So it's not that the move starts with a lift up. The move starts by releasing your sit bone and letting the knee become buoyant, gives you the space for the hip joint to have this internal rotation and movement. And that is a critical piece of what frees the leg. So it comes in, that's what the elbow is representing, and then it plays out to the foot. So we talked on Tuesday about following that motion to the step. Well, here we're not stepping, but it's the same thing. You're going to follow that motion out to the foot, and the foot just happens to leave the ground in this case, and it's not reaching for another step. So let's just take it from standing on your right leg. We'll go through the whole segment into the separate. Okay, so even here, you can be freeing that empty leg. You don't have to wait until it's time to lift it. And in fact, you don't lift it. Let the sit bone drop, the knee become buoyant, the hip joint roll in, and play out to the foot. Then we can go on. Go to the second separate. So let go of that left leg, and hip joint comes in, sit bone drops, knee becomes buoyant. Follow that motion out into your empty foot. Rest your legs. So this quality of elbow comes in and then it plays out I want you to do that with me. This isn't what the arm motion is in the form, but I think it will give you a sense of what's happening. So you can even start with your hand in a fist. Put the elbow into your hip joint. This first part here will free your foot from the ground. So your foot's on the ground, you make this shape and let the hip joint come in, the sit bone drops, the knee becomes buoyant. Just do this much. Do that a few times. Put the foot down flat, turn toward your other foot, so now you're in the opposite corner, and come into this place and notice how that takes your foot off the ground without any lifting going on at all. Now just do this a few times. Get yourself on top of your one leg and elbow comes in, sit bone drops, knee becomes buoyant. Now your foot has just freed itself from the ground. Follow it out to the toes. Rest your leg, do it on the other leg. So now, whichever leg you were on, switch. Your foot's in the corner, you're facing the corner. Your other foot's just a little bit ahead of you. And let it be flat on the ground and turn toward it, letting the elbow come in toward your hip joint to help you drop the sit bone, let the knee become buoyant, and the hip joint float in. Notice how that takes your foot right off the ground. So just do that much a few times. We're not even trying to make the foot come up. I just want you to feel how this rebalancing quality right there is what frees the leg and lets the foot become empty. So do it again. Coming in, elbow reminds you what to do with your hip joint, and that takes the foot off the ground. Next time, we'll follow it out, and at that point, you can open your palm and help lead the energy out to your foot. So your foot's down there, you're facing the leg you're standing on, and elbow comes in, sit bone drops, knee becomes buoyant, plays out to the foot. So let's do this whole segment again with this in mind. From standing on the right leg. And go. As you turn back here to the cross hands place, that right leg should already be pretty free. And now let this rebalancing happen where it comes in toward your center line in the hip socket and allows the foot to come up freely and then continue. Next one. When your left leg repositions out in front, it's already empty. Get that rebalancing quality. The hip joint comes in, sit bone drops, knee is buoyant, follow it out to the foot. And rest your legs. There's a sense of not lifting from above, but almost like there's a giant beach ball underneath your emptying leg, and it inflates and frees the leg kind of from below. So do this with me. Come to the cross hands place, and when it's time to bring the leg up, we're going to do it both ways. So lift from above. Just bring your thigh up to the position that you're intending to come to. And do that a couple times, just lifting it, and see what that does to your balance and the feeling in the empty leg, the feeling in your belly, all that stuff. So lift from above. Try to just put your leg up there. The whole thing comes up. So let's shake that out because that puts a bunch of tension into your leg. So let's try it again. And this time, you're going to do that whole thing where the elbow comes, where you come in like what the elbow describes, and let it come out to your foot, and feel that it's being lifted from below rather than above. So, sit bone drops, knee is buoyant, hip joint comes in, and it's like a big beach ball inflates underneath your leg to bring it up. Rest your leg, and we'll do it on the other side. So first, let's do it where you just lift up your leg from on top. And picking up your leg. Do it a few times. Pick the leg up. One more time. Notice what you tighten, what happens to your balance. Now, we're going to make this shape. Sit bone drops, knee is buoyant, hip joint comes in, and the beach ball inflates from below and gets your leg up. So do it that way a few times. And once more. Great. So one of the things that defines Tai Chi movement is not just where you end up in any given posture on the externals, it's the source of how it arrives there. And that's what I want you to feel with the difference between lifting your leg and doing this rebalancing shape that gives it a different quality of how it gets there. The source of what leads it there is what's going to make it be more like Tai Chi. So let's do that segment one more time. Now you've got all these things to think about, and then I'll turn it over to Lee. So, standing on your right leg, and we'll just flow through these two separates. Begin. And you know what to do. Sit bone, knee, hip joint. Rebalancing of that leg. Coming up from below. Great. So rest your legs, and we'll do a little changing of the guard here, and Lee will get us through some more of this stuff.
Let's continue. So, we're working both Tuesday and today on the way that you separate the weight and the changes in your shape and your balance that you use to get the weight separated and then to do something with that empty foot. So just to review this again, stand on either leg and put the other leg out in front of you. And what you're going to start out with is face towards the back leg corner slightly. We're going to separate the front leg. And the way this works is that you turn towards the front leg, which brings the front of the hip in. That's the gesture of the elbow coming in. You allow the sit bone to drop, and as you feel the sit bone dropping, there'll be a corresponding balance in the knee of the empty leg, and that lets the empty foot float off the ground. So just work this some. We'll do both sides. Standing on your back foot, you start out face towards the corner, Turn towards the front, bringing the front of the hip in, dropping the sit bone, allowing the knee to buoy, and let the leg float, the foot float just off the ground. We're not trying to pick it up big. You're just trying to get it off the ground. And change to the other side. So same mechanics. You start out facing the corner of your rear foot. As you turn to the front of the hip joint will come in, the sit bone will drop. As the sit bone drops, the knee will become buoyant and will float, and that allows the foot to come off the ground. So work that a number of times, from the corner to the front of the hip comes in, sit bone drops, knee floats. Release, back to the corner. Turn to the front of the hip comes in, sit bone drops, knee becomes buoyant, foot leaves the ground. And again. Turning, allowing the front of the hip to come in, sit bone dropping, knee floats. And so, take a break. A lot of the time when we're working on separation, we're doing one of those forms where you're, stopping every place and making sure that you can pick the foot up and you can do that. It's really easy for that to turn into force and effort. And so this is what Beth was working on when she had us do the separates and lift the foot. So you're paying attention to the front and you feel like you're lifting the whole thing. Versus being in there, making that shape, allowing the foot to be freed, and then letting the motion play out, the beach ball inflating underneath the leg. We're trying to get you to have those two different feelings of getting to the same, roughly the same external place by using force, lifting the leg, or by using your shape and your balance and the changes you make to allow the leg to come up. You want to really feel that difference. Same thing happens when we're just doing any old separation. So stand on one leg, put the other leg out in front. And now this is smaller, just lift the leg. Lift the empty leg. Right? So this is good because this gets you actually separating. But notice that that's force and that it's happening on the top of the leg and everything is coming up. And then do your changing balance thing. Front of the hip joint comes in, sit bone drops, knee becomes buoyant, foot floats off the ground. So that is much less effort. And that's this gesture played out really small. Do it on the other side. Standing on a back leg, front leg's out in front of you. Lift it a couple times. Notice that everything is coming up. Notice that you're using force to do that. Now change your shape and balance. Hip joint comes in, sit bone drops, knee is buoyant, foot floats. Working that a couple times. And you can make the little hand gestures if that helps you. And take a break. So, separating empty and full is a cosmic principle that describes how the whole universe is organized. And so that's really cool. It's also a specific energetic and mechanical thing that you do in order to free your leg to do something. In order for this to work, and so we start out by just checking our weight in places so that people know they're really, they're not in white crane like this, where then they have to move the body in order to pick the foot up, but they know they're actually in white crane in a place where you can float the foot without having to move the body. But it's also how we move our empty feet. And so we've looked at some examples so far. We looked at the big steps. On Tuesday we did Embrace Tiger and Four Corners. Today we looked at going into Flying Diagonal. And in all of those, you're wanting that foot to actually go someplace. We looked at going from ward off left into ward off right. And you've got to have a couple components for this to happen. One of the components you have to have is your balance. Because if your balance isn't there, then you're not going to be able to pick up a foot. And it's not just a matter of, trying hard enough or, you have some character flaw or, any of that stuff. If your balance isn't there, you won't be able to free the empty foot. You'll have to use it to stay up. And our bodies are really good at keeping us from falling over, even though we all do fall. But, your body is really going to do a lot of work to keep you from falling. And so part of what you have to do is build trust in the body so that it believes you can really stand on one leg. And one of the tools for getting your balance to the place where you can really stand on one leg is this cross balance. So don't neglect that. You will use force if you come in here and you forget about cross balance. You may be able to place your foot and pick it back up. But when I'm doing that, you see there's a bunch of problems. I'm leaning. I'm using force on this leg. It's a whole different thing than being there. Oh, upright. I've got my cross balance. My foot can go and I can execute this shape to let the foot float. That's a whole different thing. And so using your cross balance to make this go is really, really important. Then there's a question of where does the motivation come from? What causes that foot to go someplace without you forcing it? And so there's a bunch of things you can do for that. One of them is kind of a hydraulic displacement. Whereas something goes down, something else comes up. And that's part of this letting the sit bone drop to let the knee become buoyant. So that's a classic hydraulic. I sit down in the bathtub and the bathtub water rises. So I lower myself into the bathtub and the water, which is my knee, rises. So I can sink in order to create a rise someplace. I can also do we talk about this sometimes, creating a feeling of tautness and releasing it, which will cause, you've created some potential energy and you let that go, and then that actually motivates it. So that's a whole topic of where do you motivate the motion from? Sure, directed by the waist, but what's the thing that you do in order to actually get this? And so we're mostly working on the hydraulic model with it today. But then the other thing is, how do you aim it? How do you get it to go where you want? And so that's where these steps come in. We looked at just doing this with single whip on Tuesday, where I come through and I've extended this out here, and now I make this shape. I sink the sit bone, I allow the knee to float, and I use my waist and the knee to direct the foot so that it comes into the place that I want it to be for a single whip, versus trying to place the foot there. And when I try to get the effect at the end, I'm going to use force. If I'm thinking about moving my foot from one place to another, I'm going to use force. The leg will become tighter. And so we want to get away from that. We want to get you able to skillfully aim. So let's do going into single whip once or twice just to experience that and give it your best. And then I'll work on another move, and then we'll do a whole form where this whole thing is. So starting out in push, Beth's facing the way you might be facing if we were doing a form. I'm going to face so that I end up stepping towards the camera. Sit back and turn and shift and turn. Okay, now execute this whole thing. Make the Maggie gesture. The front of the hip joint comes in, the sit bone drops, the knee buoys, and now follow that motion out to where the foot goes. And then finish up single whip. Let's do that again and give it your best shot. From push, sitting back, turning, shifting and turning, extend the hook. Okay, do it. Front of the hip comes in, sit bone drops, knee floats. Follow the motion to the foot. Single whip. Okay, now let's do it one time where you try to get the result, where what you're doing is placing your foot. And when we do it this time, after we've placed the foot, I'm going to have you stop and really try to understand the levels of tension that you built in your leg when you did that, versus when you let this hydraulic motion and the directing happen. So, from push, sit back, turn, shift and turn, extend the hook. Okay, now move your foot and stop and check your empty leg out. I don't care if you're strong enough to pry that foot off the ground. I want you to feel the levels of tension that you put in there by trying to direct the foot. Okay, and now one more time, and let the foot follow the motion that you're making rather than having its motion be your intent. Go ahead, turn, shift and turn, extend. Okay, execute the shape change. and let that play out to the foot. And stop here and check out what your leg feels like. It should feel a lot better. And then finish. Great. So there's a whole bunch of things you have to have. You have to have your balance, and the cross balance really helps with having your balance. You have to have something that motivates the motion so that you're not just forcing your hands or your feet to go someplace. And you have to have a way of taking that motivation, which can be tapping the ground, all these things, can be the hydraulic model, can be a release of a tautness. You've got to have a way of taking that motivation and aiming it where you want it to go. And for the legs, the knees are really important for aiming. And the knees are only available if you've got the hips working right. So this balance between the sit bone and the knee, this freeing of the leg so that the waist can direct the foot, these are all critical components of being able to just separate in a static posture or being able to use that empty foot and do something, which could be kicking, could be stepping, as whatever you're doing with it. So I want to look at one more place for a couple minutes, and then we'll do a whole form, and that'll give you a chance to actually work on this stuff. And the place is fist under elbow. So let's do fist under elbow from single whip in the corner. I'll face the same direction as you to start out with. So single whip in the corner. Sit back, forearm goes down, rear hand opens up. Turn the waist to move the front foot. Shift. Release the rear foot, let it take a little step. Turn, and now this is the part I'm interested in. Sink, allow the left foot to come in, turn to the front, send the left foot out. Do that again. Single whip. Sit back. Turn the waist. Extending. Small step. Turn. Fold the arms, bring the foot in, turn, let the foot come out. Once more. Single whip. Go ahead. Coming in, the knee is buoyant, waist turns, that lets the foot go out. So there's a lot of action that we're doing there with that empty leg. We've got to have all these pieces. It's, when I come back here and I've gotten to this place, I don't just bring the foot back to my ankle. You can see when I'm doing that, nothing else is changing in the whole leg. What's happening is I'm sinking, the sit bone is dropping, and the knee is becoming buoyant. And as I do that, I've got one of those little yin-yangs happening in the leg. So that as the sit bone drops, the knee comes up, and the foot coming in by my ankle is a result of that, not what I'm doing. I'm not trying to pull the foot back to the ankle. What I'm doing is I'm letting the whole leg rebalance, and as it does that, that motion plays out into the foot, and then I'm turning my waist and I let this come out through the leg. So this is a little bit like this, only with more turning going on. Everything comes in, waist turns direct with the knee, let the foot come out. So let's do this a couple more times. I'll go fairly slowly so that you've got a chance to watch all of that stuff. And try to put what we've been working on for these last 2 days into context of fist under elbow. So I guess I'll face so that I finish doing fist under elbow towards the camera, but Beth's in kind of the canonical direction. So go ahead, sit back, in turn, release the rear foot, let it step, turn. Okay, and now as you sit down, let the sit bone drop, let the knee buoy, let that bring the foot in, and turn the waist, and use the knee to aim the empty foot. Again. From single whip, go ahead. Shifting and turning. Sinking, knee is buoyant. Aim with the knee, let that move the foot. So the foot is the end of the chain. It's the last thing that happens. All the mechanics in the leg is what affects the foot going there, rather than me moving my foot. Once more. And go ahead. Sinking, sit bone drops, knee is buoyant. Aiming, let the foot go where it goes. And now check that you're actually separated. The same thing, let the sit bones sink, let the knee float, feel that the front of the hip comes in, and that should pick your foot up off the ground, allowing the ankle to relax so that the ball of the foot goes closer to the ground as the foot comes off the ground. Not lifting, not a difficult thing. Great, take a break. So we're trying to get you more skilled at separating empty and full, because becoming more skilled at separating empty and full will free you up. It'll make it a lot easier to move. And so then when it's easier to move, you need to aim. Your intention, your your awareness has a lot to do with the aiming. But the aiming is a process that begins from the beginning and goes out through the body, rather than something where you're moving the extremities. So we're trying to give you, sure, of course, we'd love to have everybody skillfully separating, so that we stop and say you should, check your weight, that it's easy for everybody to do it. But that's just static. We want to see it happening in movement, and in order to do that, you need to become skilled with your balance, your ability to generate an impulse, and your ability to aim that impulse where it's going. So work on all of those things, and your Tai Chi will get more enjoyable. So let's do a whole form. I always promise that I'm going to go faster, and then I always go slow. So I'll try to go faster, and we'll see. The main thing is so that we're not agonizing over this, so that you let it happen, and you feel that your empty legs are free, easy to move, and that then you use the waist, the correct relationship between hip and knee, to aim where the foot is going. So the whole thing from the top. Nice and easy, enjoyable, because you are free. And go ahead. Paying attention to your cross balance to improve your balance. Left leg, right hand. Because you're well balanced, and because you've actually separated the weight, your empty foot is truly empty, which means that a small impetus can move it if you aim. The balance shapes and adjustments that you make to separate are the same that you make to step. Front of the hip comes in, sit bone drops, knee buoys, aim with the waist and knee. Big step coming up. So do this easily. Use all these skills for fist under elbow. Find diagonal. Use the skill to step. Sit bone drops, knee is buoyant. Aim with waist and knee. Getting the cross balance will really help the steps in cloud hands. So feel the weighted bottom hand as you step. And feel how the idea in the knee makes it easy to move the leg and foot. On to single whip this time. Make the Maggie gesture with your hips and follow the foot. Use this skill for all of these steps. You'll need both your cross balance and your ability to use the hip-knee balance to free and to aim the foot. Great. Well, first week of 2021, and we're doing the good Tai Chi work. First principle is relax. We want to be able to move skillfully, gracefully, without effort, and moving by letting go, by releasing. In order to do that, you got to have a whole bunch of other things. And this separating empty and full, name of the art, Tai Chi Chuan, the martial art of complete separation, of clear distinctions, of yin and yang not mushed up at all. You've got to have that. And so the separation not only is a cosmic principle, but it's also part of what enables you to move freely and gracefully. And that feels really good. So as you get closer to that, you'll want to do it more. So spend some time on this separation. And welcome to 2021, and we'll see you all again real soon.